The courtroom door slammed shut, sealing 17-year-old Jamal Carter inside a room that reeked of polished wood and old prejudice. He stood alone at the defendant's table, heart pounding like a drum in his chest, knowing every eye in the room saw him as guilty before he even spoke. This wasn't just a trial, it was a war, and he was a kid from the projects armed with nothing but his truth. Jamal's life had always been a fight, growing up in a crumbling apartment block in Southside Chicago, where the walls were thin and the odds thinner. He'd learned early that the world didn't root for kids like him. Black, poor, and fatherless, he was a statistic to MOSTA number on a police report, a name on a welfare check. But Jamal was more than that. He was the kid who stayed up late reading library books under a flickering bulb, dreaming of a future beyond the gunshots that echoed outside his window. Now, at 17, he faced a charge that could erase it all. Theft of a $2,000 laptop from a wealthy suburban store. The evidence? A grainy security video showing a black teen in a hoodie. The problem? Jamal swore he wasn't there. The prosecutor, Richard Hale, paced like a predator, his tailored suit gleaming under the courtroom lights. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice smooth as venom. "This boy thought he could walk into a store, take what wasn't his and vanish into the shadows. But justice sees through the lies." His eyes locked onto Jamal, a smirk curling his lips, as if the case was already won. The jury, mostly white, middle-aged, and visibly uncomfortable, shifted in their seats, their gazes flickering between Hale and Jamal. In their eyes, Jamal saw the same judgment he'd faced his whole life. Guilty until proven otherwise. Jamal's mother, Letitia, sat in the front row, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. She'd worked double shifts at the diner for years, scraping by to keep Jamal in school, away from the streets that swallowed so many others. Now, watching her son stand trial, she felt the weight of a system that seemed designed to crush them both. "You tell the truth, baby," she'd whispered to him that morning, her voice cracking. "You tell it, and God'll make a way." But as Hale painted Jamal as a thief, a thug, a menace, Letitia's faith felt like a candle flickering in a storm. The public defender, Ms. Elena Torres, was overworked and underpaid, her briefcase stuffed with files from a dozen other cases. She believed Jamal, but belief wasn't enough. The evidence was stacked against him. The video, the store clerk's testimony claiming Jamal, looked like the type. And the fact that he'd been near the mall that day, visiting a friend. "It's circumstantial," Elena had told him, her voice low and urgent. "But we need more than your word, Jamal. We need proof." He'd nodded, but inside, he felt like he was drowning. Proof? How do you prove you're not what everyone already thinks you are? The trial's first day was a blur of accusations. Hale called the store clerk, a nervous white woman named Karen Wells, who pointed at Jamal from the stand. "That's him," she said, her voice quivering with conviction. "I saw him lurking by the electronics. He didn't belong there." Jamal's stomach twisted. He hadn't been in that store, hadn't even stepped foot in that part of the mall. But the jury didn't know that. To them, he was just another black kid in a hoodie, and hoodies meant trouble. Elena cross-examined, her questions sharp but careful. "Ms. Wells, can you confirm the exact time you saw the defendant? The lighting in the store, was it clear enough to identify his face?" Karen stammered, her certainty crumbling. But the damage was done. The jury's faces were stone, their minds already half-made. Jamal watched them, his jaw tight, refusing to let the tears burning his eyes spill over. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. That night, in the holding cell, Jamal lay on the hard cot, staring at the ceiling. He thought of his mother's words, her unwavering belief in him. He thought of the books he'd read, stories of people who fought against impossible odds and won. "If they won't give me justice," he whispered to himself, "I'll find it myself." He didn't know how yet, but the spark of defiance in his chest grew hotter. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom, was fighting for every kid like him, written off before they even had a chance. Day 2 of the trial dawned with a new tension. Hale called a police officer, Detective Mark Grayson, who'd arrested Jamal based on the video and Karen's description. Grayson's testimony was clinical, damning. The suspect matched the profile. Young, black, male, wearing a dark hoodie. We apprehended him 2 blocks from the crime scene. The word profile hit Jamal like a punch. Profile. It wasn't just about the hoodieite, it was about his skin, his existence. He wanted to scream, to demand why being black made him a suspect, but he stayed silent, his hands clenched under the table. Elena fought back, pointing out holes in the evidence. Detective Grayson, the video doesn't clearly show the suspect's face. Isn't it possible you arrested the wrong person? Grayson shrugged, unmoved. The description fit. That's what matters. The jury scribbled notes, their expressions unreadable. Jamal felt the walls closing in, the weight of their assumptions pressing down on him. He glanced at his mother, her eyes locked on him, silently pleading for him to hold on. Then came Jamal's turn to speak. Elena had warned him, "Don't get emotional, just tell your story." But as he took the stand, the words poured out raw and unfiltered. "I wasn't in that store," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "I was visiting my friend Marcus, helping him with math homework. I've never stolen anything in my life. I'm not what they say I am." He looked at the jury, forcing himself to meet their eyes. "You don't know me, but I'm not a thief. I'm a kid who wants to go to college, to make my mom proud. You've got the wrong person." The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with tension. Hale stood for his cross-examination, his smile cold. "So, Mr. Carter," he said, dragging out the words, "you expect us to believe you were just studying while a crime happened 2 blocks away? A crime that matches your exact description." Jamal's pulse raced, but he held his ground. "I don't expect you to believe me," he said, his voice rising. "I'm asking you to look at the truth. That video isn't me. You know it and I know it." Hale's smirk faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. Jamal saw it crack in the prosecutor's armor. He wasn't just a kid anymore, he was a fighter, and he wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, the trial became a battleground. Elena dug into the case, uncovering inconsistencies. The video's timestamp was off by an hour, and a second camera angle from the mall showed a different teen in a similar hoodie leaving the store. Jamal's friend Marcus testified, confirming Jamal was with him during the alleged theft. But the jury's faces remained hard, their biases unshaken. Jamal could feel the weight of a system that didn't want him to win. Then, on the 5th day, Jamal had an idea. He'd been reading about alibis in a library book on criminal law, one he'd borrowed months ago when he dreamed of becoming a lawyer. "Ms. Torres," he whispered during a recess, "what if we can prove I was somewhere else? Not just with Marcus, but somewhere public."
Elena frowned, skeptical.
"We'd need hard evidence, Jamal. Something undeniable." That night, Jamal racked his brain, replaying the day of the theft. Then it hit him, the community center. He'd stopped by to drop off a flyer for a tutoring program he volunteered for, right around the time of the theft. The center had a sign-in sheet, and the director, Mrs. Jenkins, knew him well. "She'll vouch for me," he told Elena the next morning, his voice urgent. "And the sheet, it's got my name, the time, everything." Elena hesitated, then nodded. "It's a long shot, but let's try." She subpoenaed the sign-in sheet and called Mrs. Jenkins to the stand. The older black woman walked in, her presence commanding, her eyes warm as she looked at Jamal. "That boy," she said, pointing at him, "was at my center at 3:15 p.m. on the day of the theft. I saw him myself. He's one of our best volunteers." The courtroom buzzed. Hale objected, calling the evidence convenient, but the judge allowed it. The sign-in sheet was presented, showing Jamal's name in his own handwriting, time-stamped at 3:17 p.m. minutes before the theft occurred across town. For the first time, Jamal saw doubt flicker in the jury's eyes. He felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. Hale, sensing the tide shifting, doubled down. "This sheet proves nothing," he argued in his closing statement. A desperate attempt by a desperate defendant to dodge justice. But Jamal could see the jury wasn't so sure anymore. Elena's closing was fierce, her voice rising with passion. "This case isn't about a laptop," she said. "It's about a young man's future, about a system that judges him before he even speaks. You have the power to see the truth. Use it." As the jury filed out to deliberate, Jamal sat with his mother, their hands clasped tightly. "You did good, baby," Letitia whispered, tears in her eyes. "No matter what, you fought." But Jamal wasn't ready to lose. He'd come too far, seen too much. This wasn't just about him, it was about every kid who'd been dismissed, every life written off by a glance. The jury returned after 3 agonizing hours. The foreman stood, his face unreadable. "We find the defendant, Jamal Carter, not guilty." The courtroom erupted gasps, cheers, and a few angry murmurs. Letitia sobbed, pulling Jamal into a hug so tight he could barely breathe. Elena smiled, exhausted but triumphant. Hale's face was a mask of fury, but he said nothing, slinking back to his table. Jamal walked out of the courthouse into the Chicago sunlight, free but forever changed. He'd faced a system that wanted to bury him and came out standing. The fight wasn't over, not for him, not for others like him. But as he looked at his mother's tear-streaked smile, he knew one thing. He'd proven them wrong, and he'd do it again. The courthouse steps felt like a new world under Jamal's feet, the weight of the trial lifting but leaving scars that would linger. The Chicago sun beat down, warm and unforgiving, as reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. Jamal Carter, how does it feel to be free?" A microphone was thrust toward him, the reporter's voice eager for a soundbite. He froze, his mother's arm tight around his shoulders, her proud smile anchoring him. "It feels like I can breathe again," he said, his voice steady but raw. "But it shouldn't have been this hard to prove I'm not a criminal." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical, their faces a mirror of the city's divided soul. Letitia pulled him close, whispering, "You did it, baby. You showed them." But Jamal knew it wasn't just about him. The victory was his, but the war was bigger against a system that saw kids like him as threats before they were seen as people. As they pushed through the crowd, he caught snippets of conversations. "He got lucky. The system's broken. That kid's a hero." Each word was a reminder that his fight had rippled beyond the courtroom, stirring something in the city's heart. Back home, the apartment felt smaller, the cracked walls and sagging couch a stark contrast to the polished courtroom. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, his mother brewing coffee, the familiar scent grounding him. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft but searching. He didn't have an answer yet. The trial had drained them emotionally, financially, spiritually, but it had also lit a fire in him. He wasn't just a kid from the projects anymore. He was a voice, a story, a spark. The next morning, Jamal woke to his phone buzzing with notifications. His story had gone viral on X, posts spreading like wildfire. "Justice for Jamal" trended alongside clips of his testimony, his defiant words echoing across the internet. "I'm not what they say I am," he'd said, and now thousands were quoting it, sharing it, turning it into a rallying cry. But not everyone was cheering. Some posts called him a thug who got off, accusing the jury of being swayed by woke politics. The hate stung, but it wasn't new. Jamal had grown up with those words, those looks, that judgment. What was new was the support strangers from across the country, even the world, saying his fight was theirs too. At school, the air was different. Kids who'd barely spoken to him before now approached, some with fist bumps, others with questions. "How'd you do it, man?" asked Deshaun, a classmate who'd always kept his distance. "You really beat the system?" Jamal shrugged, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "I just told the truth, and I had people who believed me." Deshaun nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "That's more than most of us get." His English teacher, Ms. Harper, pulled him aside after class. She was a black woman in her 50s, her hair streaked with gray, her voice warm but firm. "Jamal, what you did in that courtroom, it's bigger than you. You know that, right?" She handed him a flyer for a local youth activism group. "They're talking about your case. You could make a difference. Tell your story. Help others. Jamal took the flyer, his fingers tracing the bold letters, "Fight for justice." He wasn't sure he was ready to be a hero, but the idea stuck, like a seed planted in fertile ground. That weekend, Jamal and Letitia attended a community meeting at the center where he'd volunteered. Mrs. Jenkins, the director, had organized it, her voice booming as she introduced him. "This young man," she said, pointing to Jamal, faced a system that wanted to chew him up and spit him out, but he fought back with truth, with courage, and with heart. The room erupted in applause, and Jamal felt his face heat up. He wasn't used to this praise, attention, respect. But as he looked out at the crowd, black, white, Latino, young, Olda saw something new. Hope. He took the microphone, his hands shaky but his voice clear. "I didn't win because I'm special," he said. "I won because I had people who fought for Mimi Mom, my lawyer, Mrs. Jenkins, my friend Marcus. But too many kids don't get that chance. They're judged before they even open their mouths. That's what we've got to change." The room was silent, every word landing like a stone in still water. He handed the mic back, his heart racing, but for the first time, it wasn't fear, it was purpose. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Jamal's story caught the attention of a local news station, which ran a segment on racial bias in the justice system, featuring his case. Activists reached out, inviting him to speak at rallies. A lawyer from a pro bono firm offered to help him apply for college scholarships, citing his resilience and intellect. Even Elena, his public defender, checked in, her voice proud. "You're a fighter, Jamal. Don't stop now." But not everyone was inspired. The store clerk, Karen Wells, doubled down in an interview, claiming she'd been vilified for telling the truth. "I know what I saw," she insisted, her words sparking a fresh wave of online vitriol. Posts exploded with argumentsome defending Jamal, others accusing him of playing the race card. The prosecutor, Hale, stayed silent, but rumors swirled that he was pushing for an appeal, unwilling to let a kid from the projects outshine him. The hate was loud, but Jamal was learning to tune it out. He had bigger battles to fight. One evening, as he sat with his mother watching the news, a segment aired about another black teen arrested under similar circumstances. No hard evidence, just a profile. Letitia's face tightened, her eyes glistening. "That could have been you," she whispered. Jamal nodded, his jaw set. "That's why I'm not done," he said. He'd been accepted to speak at a citywide youth summit, a chance to share his story and push for change. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, was fighting for every kid who'd been dismissed, profiled, or silenced. The summit was held in a packed auditorium, the stage lit with harsh lights that made Jamal's palms sweat. He wore a borrowed blazer, too big in the shoulders, but it made him feel like he belonged. As he stepped to the podium, the crowd hushed, their eyes on him, some curious, some skeptical, all waiting. "My name is Jamal Carter," he began, his voice echoing. "A few months ago, I was on trial for something I didn't do. They saw my skin, my clothes, my neighborhood, and decided I was guilty. But I'm here because I proved them wrong and because we need to prove them wrong for everyone." He told his story, raw and unfiltered, the fear, the anger, the hope. He spoke of the system's flaws, the way it chewed up kids like him, the way prejudice hid behind words like profile and evidence. But he also spoke of resilience, of community, of the power of truth. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a kid who refused to let them define me. And if I can do it, so can you." The crowd rose to their feet, their applause shaking the room. Jamal saw his mother in the front row, tears streaming down her face, her smile brighter than the stage lights. After the summit, a college recruiter approached him, offering a full scholarship to a pre-law program. "You've got a mind for this," she said, handing him her card. "The world needs lawyers like you." Jamal took it, his heart pounding. A lawyer. The dream he'd buried under years of doubt suddenly felt real. Months later, Jamal stood at the community center, now a regular speaker at their events. He'd started a mentorship program for younger kids, teaching them to read, to dream, to fight. The center's walls were plastered with photos of him speaking at the summit, hugging his mother, laughing with Marcus. The sign-in sheet from the day of the theft was framed, a reminder of the truth that saved him. Mrs. Jenkins called it Jamal's legacy, but he just called it a start. His victory hadn't erased the prejudice he faced, nor the system's flaws. He still saw it in the news, in the streets, in the eyes of strangers. But he also saw change. In the kids who looked up to him, in the community that rallied around him, in the mother who never stopped believing. Jamal had outsmarted the court, but more than that, he'd outsmarted the narrative that tried to define him. He was no longer just a statistic. He was a voice, a force, a future. As he looked out at the world, still fractured but fighting to heal, Jamal knew his story wasn't just his own. It was a call to action, a question for anyone listening. What's right, what's wrong, and what will you do about it? Share your truth because justice starts when we speak.